Alina could barely hold back her tears. Once again, she had convinced herself that everything would be all right. But now, Inga and her daughter Serena would once again portray Alina to her father as a silly, spoiled girl going through a difficult adolescence. I knew, of course, that puberty is a tough time, Inga said, rolling her eyes dramatically in front of her distraught husband. But for Alina to fall so far, if only you knew the trouble I go to just to keep her in line. With Serena, this never happened. I know you do a lot for Alina and I appreciate it, her father said, his eyes cast down in shame for his daughter and her supposedly disgraceful behavior. The worst part was that trying to explain was useless. When her father wasn't home, Inga would mock and humiliate Alina, burying her in endless chores and preventing her from studying, seeing friends, or pursuing her hobbies. But Inga was a master of manipulation and a brilliant actress. She always managed to turn her father against his own daughter. His gaze would become cold and distant, and he would dismiss Alina's pitiful excuses and attempts to vilify the saintly woman who was supposedly raising his difficult child. That's why Alina wouldn't even try to prove her innocence now. There was no point. The girl sat huddled in the corner of her bed, her face buried in a huge teddy bear. It was a gift from her grandmother's neighbor, Mr. Davies, when Alina had turned 7. She remembered how overjoyed she had been to see him with that giant toy in his arms, his usual broad smile on his face. Oh, that had been a wonderful time. She wished she could go back. Thinking of her grandmother, a smile touched Alina's lips. She missed that person who had loved and accepted her completely. Her grandmother had surrounded her only grandchild with warmth and care, talking with her often and hugging her. But she had been gone for nearly 5 years now. Grandma Vera had passed away when Alina was 10, and since then, Alina's life had changed dramatically, and not for the better. Yet, Alina's childhood had been truly wonderful. Despite never knowing her own mother, she had felt completely happy. Her mother had died right after giving birth to her first and only child. There had been some unforeseen complications, and the doctors couldn't do anything. That's how her father, Stephen, ended up with a baby in his arms. He had loved his wife deeply and was devastated by her loss. He had no idea what to do with the newborn. He was even afraid to hold her. It was a good thing his mother was there in that difficult time. To Stephen's great relief, she took charge of the baby while he was consumed by grief. At first, her grandmother had stayed in the family's city flat. Alina's mother's parents had died years ago when she was still a student. Stephen, a ship's engineer on a fishing trawler, was often away at sea. He also had no great desire to care for an infant, so Alina was raised entirely by her grandmother. Her grandmother tried to bring father and daughter closer, not because it was difficult for her, but because it was the right thing to do. However, Stephen was so lost in his grief that he couldn't see past it. He believed it would have been better if he and his wife had never had children and had instead traveled and focused entirely on each other. Eventually, her grandmother tired of being the mediator between Stephen and Alina. She longed to return to her hometown, a cozy cottage with a green roof in the village of Little Hope. There was also plenty of work to be done in her garden, and her chickens, cats, and dog needed attention. Her neighbor, Mr. Davies, had been looking after everything, but it was time for her to return. Deciding it was pointless to reason with her son, her grandmother packed up little Alina and took her back home. Stephen was relieved. The baby clearly annoyed him and reminded him of his tragedy. Besides, he was soon due for a long sea journey, which also pleased him. The waves, the companionship, the hard work, it would help him forget. And to some extent, it did. Meanwhile, her grandmother threw herself into caring for her little granddaughter with her characteristic energy. Nappies, baby grows, and pram walks. She felt like a young mother again, but this time she was enjoying motherhood with all her heart. When her own son Stephen was a baby, she had not fully grasped the joy of having a child. She had been too busy setting up her small cottage, finishing her studies at the local college, and working part-time. Now, as an older woman, she devoted all her time, attention, and love to Alina. Looking at the girl, she felt a mix of gentle affection and deep pity. How could such a tiny baby be without a mother? Her father, it seemed, wasn't keen on raising her either. Her son's behavior saddened her, but she hoped she could fix things. Alina grew into a sweet and easygoing child. She rarely got sick and hit all her milestones on time. Her grandmother was overjoyed. The girl was surrounded by kind-hearted people who radiated warmth and acceptance. First and foremost was her grandmother, who was the most important person in Alina's life. She was reliable, caring, and kind. She always understood and supported her. Her grandmother opened up the world to her, talking about everything under the sun and explaining complex things in simple terms. Alina couldn't recall a single time her grandmother dismissed a question with, "You'll understand when you're older." They seemed to understand each other without words. Alina also spent time with her grandmother's friends and neighbors. She visited their homes and played with their grandchildren. The children would often run from house to house in a noisy group, having breakfast at one place, lunch at another, or watching television all together. Sometimes a parent would take the group to the river or the woods. It was a joyful, carefree life. She had an especially warm relationship with Mr. Davies. His house was across the street, and he often came over to help her grandmother with manly jobs like fixing a tap, mending the shed roof, or moving a cupboard. Her grandmother would thank him with freshly baked pies and aromatic roast dinners. Mr. Davies was a widower. When Alina first heard the strange word, she frowned, trying to understand. Her grandmother explained, of course. There was no one to bake pies for her neighbor. Of course, he could cook for himself, but he had never learned the art of baking. Alina later realized that Mr. Davies's feelings for her grandmother were probably more than just friendly. Why not? He was a widower, and her grandmother's husband had been gone for years. But her grandmother had likely decided to dedicate her life to her granddaughter and nothing else. The older woman had big plans for Alina's future. She spent countless hours with her, pouring her soul into the girl. She believed she would live a long life with her granddaughter and would be there to see her through school, get her married, and even help with her great-grandchildren. But it was not to be. Thanks to her grandmother, Alina had nothing but fond memories of her childhood. She especially loved the summer. It was a truly fun and carefree time. Mr. Davies's granddaughters from the city, Clara and Maria, would come to stay for the holidays. They were Alina's best friends, and she looked forward to their visits all year. They were inseparable, spending their days having fun with other kids from the village. They would ride their bikes to the river, go for walks in the woods, play hide and seek and tag, and tell spooky stories in the evenings. They would play football barefoot, often returning home exhausted, covered in mud, but happy. The children would often have sleepovers at Alina's grandmother's house. She never turned them away, as there was plenty of room. The kids would chat and giggle all night, but her grandmother never told them off. She understood how much fun they were having. Alina realized early on that her life was different from other children's. They had mothers. Not all had fathers, but they all had mothers, who were always there for their children, whether they were young or old, strict or kind. Of course, their fathers were there too. Alina started asking her grandmother questions at a young age, so her grandmother had to tell her what had happened. Gently and carefully, she told the girl the story of her birth. Alina hadn't known her mother, so she wasn't too upset. Her grandmother told her that her mother was now in heaven and would help her from there. It sounded like a beautiful fairy tale. But sometimes, a longing for something beautiful and unattainable would squeeze her little heart. Alina would sometimes imagine what it would have been like if her mother had been there during certain moments in her life. However, these thoughts didn't trouble her too much as long as she was living with her grandmother in Little Hope. She felt warm, comfortable, and content there. Her father, of course, would sometimes visit. He always came on Alina's birthday with gifts as long as he wasn't at sea. He also visited once every 2 months. To Alina, he was a familiar and related person, but a practical stranger. He was a handsome young man with sad grey eyes, always well-dressed. He would arrive with gifts, beautiful dolls, pretty dresses, and interesting books. Alina was amazed at how he always knew exactly what she wanted. It was as if he could read her mind. Later, she realized that her grandmother had been telling him what to buy for Alina in the city. Her father usually stayed for a couple of days, sometimes a week or 2. He never knew what to talk about with his daughter. He would ask the usual questions about school, friends, and hobbies. Alina could tell he wasn't really interested. It wasn't like with Mr. Davies, who loved listening to Alina's stories about the village kids' adventures. He would laugh and share memories from his own childhood, offering gentle but important advice. Her elderly neighbor was a wonderful listener. while her father only asked questions out of a sense of duty. Even as a small child, Alina understood this. She desperately wanted to please her father, to interest him in something, to make him happy. But her attempts always failed, shattered by his indifference. He performed his duties as a father and a son, sending money to his mother, buying things for the house, and helping with the garden and repairs when he visited. But he did it out of obligation. There was no emotional connection between him and his daughter. Her grandmother tried to reason with her son, explaining how he should act with the girl. The adults thought Alina was asleep, but she heard everything. "Your daughter needs your attention," her mother explained in a low voice. "She's growing up. Visit more often or take her on holiday with you. Show her London, Edinburgh, or go to the seaside together." "You know I work a lot, Mum," he replied. "I'm constantly at sea making money for Alina's future, no less. You often forget about her present, though." Her grandmother sighed sadly. "I don't forget. I see how well you're doing. Alina is happy with you. What can I give her? I'm still such a mess." Alina, even at a young age, realized that her very existence was a burden to her father. He would never take her on holiday or visit more often. He was better off alone in his own strange, lonely life, without her or her grandmother. It was a painful realization. To understand that her only parent didn't need her was terrifying and unpleasant. She cried herself to sleep a little that night, but the next morning she acted as if nothing had happened. Then her father left. "I'm going on a long voyage," he warned her as he hugged her goodbye. "I won't be able to make it for your first day of school. I'm sorry." "That's okay." The girl waved her hand nonchalantly. She was used to her father being absent during important moments in her life. Besides, Grandma will always be there. It was the summer before Alina started primary school. She remembered it well because something important happened at her birthday party in August. As always, her grandmother set up 2 tables in the garden, one for the children and one for their parents. Her grandmother always made her granddaughter's birthdays bright and memorable, and she herself took great pleasure in the company of good people. Both Alina and her grandmother looked forward to this celebration all year. Mr. Davies arrived a little later than the other guests and gave Alina the huge teddy bear. "It's my biggest one yet," she cried, jumping up and down with delight. Her friends, Clara and Mariah, rushed to hug her. "Happy birthday!" they shouted. "What else do you have in your hands, Mr. Davies?" she asked, clapping. "Oh, just a guitar I found in the attic," he replied. "I was cleaning out some junk and came across this instrument." "I'd forgotten you were a musician," her grandmother said joyfully. "How long has it been since you played?" "Since your wife passed, I suppose." "About 15 years now." The neighbor nodded, a flicker of sadness in his eyes. "I'd forgotten I even had it until I found it just now." "Play us something," one of the adults called out. "Play, play," the children chanted. Clara and Mariah stood proudly beside their grandfather. Mr. Davies had suddenly become the star of the party. Everyone was watching and begging him to play. "What should I play for you? Some folk songs?" he asked. Everyone cheered in agreement. Then Mr. Davies sat down, his face a picture of serene concentration, and played. It was like magic. Melodious sounds filled the garden. Alina stared at him, her mouth agape in wonder. How was he doing this? How was he making such beautiful music? The guests fell silent. "Come on, sing," Mr. Davies said. "Who's first? Who's the bravest?" The mother of a boy named Liam, one of Alina's friends, started singing in a rich, deep voice. She sang a funny song about a boy who was like a calf. The adults laughed. Alina didn't care about the lyrics. She just listened to the melody. The guests got into the spirit of it, asking Mr. Davies to play more and more songs. He surprisingly knew them all, or if he didn't, he would improvise. The adults sang in a beautiful chorus. It was so wonderful, so fun, so beautiful. The kids left the table and started a game of hide and seek. They invited Alina to join them, but she couldn't tear herself away. She sat next to Mr. Davies, listening, and then, without even realizing it, she started singing along with the adults. She quickly learned the lyrics to a song about a wounded soldier, and the guests sang it for the 3rd time. "Do you hear her sing?" a guest whispered, and everyone fell silent. Alina fell silent too. She was shy about singing alone. Liam's mother realized this and started singing with her, which made Alina more comfortable. When the music stopped, there was a round of applause. "Well done," the adults praised her. You have a beautiful voice." "It's more than just beautiful," Liam's mother said, shaking her head. "The girl has a real gift. I work at the community hall, and I can tell you she is a hidden treasure. Vera, why have you kept this secret from us all these years?" "I didn't even know myself." Her grandmother smiled, her face filled with pride. After that, Mr. Davies became an even more frequent guest, and Alina started visiting him every day. He taught her many fun children's songs. Now she would hum them everywhere, at home, in the garden, and even in the river. She wondered why she hadn't realized before how wonderful singing was. She didn't go to nursery, as it was too far away, and her grandmother didn't work. At nursery, the music teacher would have noticed her talent sooner. But at home, there was almost no music. Her grandmother listened to audiobooks, and Alina had only just realized she loved singing and music. "When you start school, we'll take you to the community hall," her grandmother said. "Liam's mother says they have a good choir that's even invited to perform in other towns. You'll sing with them. We can't let such a talent go to waste." Alina listened to her grandmother and eagerly awaited September. She wanted to be with people who shared her interests. The future looked bright and enchanting. On top of that, the girl had begged Mr. Davies to teach her to play the guitar. At first, he refused. "You're too young," he said. "Your fingers are too small, your hands are too weak. You won't even be able to hold it." But he was wrong. Alina was able to play the right chords on the first try. "See, Grandad, she can do it," her friends cried out in delight. "Are you going to teach her?" "Yes, of course," Mr. Davies said, scratching his head in bewilderment. "How can I say no to you?" He kept his promise, teaching little Alina chords every day. She made great progress, not only picking things up quickly, but also learning to create her own melodies. "I don't know anything about this," Mr. Davies told her grandmother, "but it seems she has an exceptional ear for music. She should be in a music school." "I wish," her grandmother sighed, "but we don't have one here in Little Hope, only a choir, and we can't drive to town every day. It's a good thing Anna promised she'd take her, even though she's a little young. The other kids in the choir are older." Then came the long-awaited first day of school. Alina still remembered her grandmother proudly walking her by the hand through the village streets to the school assembly. The girl was a little nervous, but it was a joyful excitement. She and her grandmother had prepared carefully. They had gone to town the day before and spent ages choosing the perfect blouse and a puffy skirt. That morning, her grandmother braided Alina's hair into tight plaits and decorated them with big white ribbons. She handed her a beautiful bouquet of gladiolus. Alina still remembered their wonderful scent. Passers-by smiled at her grandmother and the smartly dressed girl, congratulating them both on the start of the school year and wishing her good grades. Alina thanked them. She knew there would be a celebration in the evening. Her grandmother had already invited the neighborhood kids and had started preparing the dough for her famous pies. Alina was also looking forward to starting classes at the community hall. She couldn't wait to sing on a stage. Liam's mother had assured her that Alina's teacher would love her, and she was right. Mr. Petrov highly valued his new student's abilities. He was strict with her, though, despite her age. If the girl sang out of tune or mixed up the lyrics, he would scold her. But Alina wasn't afraid of the stage. She was a natural. At first, she was a backup singer, and then she started performing solos. Mr. Petrov was thrilled with his student. "Such a gift is rare," he told her grandmother when she came to pick her up. "She's a real uncut diamond. She should be in good hands. What we have here is just a small village community hall." Alina didn't stop her guitar lessons either. It had become a daily necessity for her. As a student, she had long since surpassed her teacher, but she still went to Mr. Davies's house every day. First, because he had a guitar. Second, because he always had valuable advice. And third, because none of her other acquaintances knew as much about music as Mr. Davies. He gave praise when it was due, pointed out subtleties, and sincerely admired her success. He was a kindred spirit. She and Mr. Davies were indeed kindred spirits. Her neighbor had become the grandfather she had never known, and in some ways, he had even replaced her father. Time passed. Alina grew up. She did well in school, performed with the choir, and continued to play the guitar. Her father gave her an electric guitar for her next birthday, an idea that, of course, her grandmother had given him. Alina had everything she needed to be happy. A caring grandmother, kind and understanding neighbors, and loyal friends. She felt loved and at home in Little Hope, and never even thought about moving to the city to live with her father. The city felt like a cold, alien place. It was full of faceless people who didn't even look at each other, and her father, though her own flesh and blood, was a distant stranger. People often told her that there were more opportunities in the city and that life would be more interesting for a girl growing up there. But Alina felt happy and content with her life. Her childhood was warm, sunny, and cozy, right up until that fateful day in February when Mr. Davies came to the school to pick her up. By then, Alina was already walking home from school alone. At first, her grandmother had accompanied her, but from her second year, Alina was perfectly independent. The walk was long, but it flew by when she was with her friends. The girls would walk and talk about everything and nothing, laughing and discussing school and making plans for the future. Then there was a knock on the classroom door during her literature lesson, a quiet conversation between her teacher and the person who had knocked. Then Mrs. Adams's worried eyes and her quiet request, "Alina, pack up. Your neighbor is here for you." Alina felt all her classmates' eyes on her. It was so unusual. When she saw Mr. Davies, she knew immediately that something terrible had happened. His eyes were dull, his face was grey, and his hands were trembling slightly. Her grandmother, Alina thought. Her heart was gripped by an icy hand of dread. In that moment, the girl realized her grandmother was her entire world. The man nodded silently. "She's not well. She's in the hospital." Mr. Davies didn't tell her that her grandmother was gone until they were back at her house. Her grandmother had suddenly felt unwell. Her heart had given up. She had sat down on a bench outside to rest, and that's where her neighbor, who had come by to borrow a few eggs, had found her. The ambulance had arrived right away, but the doctors couldn't save her. Alina was left alone, completely alone in the whole world. That night, her neighbor, Mrs. White, took her in. She and her grandmother had been close friends. In the company of the kind-hearted woman and her grandchildren, Alina didn't feel as lonely as she would have on her own. The grief was so powerful that it didn't even seem real. How could her grandmother be gone? And gone forever? Her father was at sea. He was informed, of course, but it would take time for him to get back to the mainland. He didn't even make it to the funeral. Alina didn't even think about her future. She cried a lot and often talked about her grandmother with the neighbors. They had known and loved her, and they spoke of her with great kindness, which made the girl feel a little better. Then her father came. He gave her an awkward hug and said the words that made Alina shrink away in pain again. "Well, daughter, I guess we'll live together in the city now." "In the city? Why in the city?" Alina didn't want to leave Little Hope at all. Of course, her grandmother was gone, and she would never be back. But she had her school, her friends, her neighbors, and her choir here. She had Mr. Davies, who would always support and comfort her, and Mrs. White and Liam and his mother. But in the city, all she had there was a cold, distant father who knew nothing about her. To Alina, he was a total stranger. "I'm not going with you," Alina said firmly, pulling away from him. "I'm not going to the city." Her father just looked at her, his eyes wide in confusion. He didn't know what to say. The neighbors came to her rescue. Very gently, they explained that there was no other way. They hugged the girl and told her they would miss her very much. There were tears in their eyes. Men and women, grandmothers and grandfathers, all gave her their phone numbers and promised they would always be happy to hear from her. Alina cried too. It was hard to leave Little Hope, but the kind adults convinced her that she had to go. "Come visit," Mr. Davies told her, "during the holidays. Clara and Maria are here too. I don't care if there are 2 girls or 3. You'll all have fun together." Alina knew that it was a genuine invitation and that Mr. Davies really meant it. This knowledge made her feel a little warmer and a little better. It wasn't the first time the girl had been in her father's flat. She and her grandmother had visited him sometimes. Alina even had her own room there, with a bed, a big wardrobe, and a desk. Everything a child needed. But she had never liked the place. She much preferred her room in her grandmother's house, which was full of her own things, her toys, her books, and her aquarium. But she had no choice. She had to get used to her new life. The first thing Alina did was put the teddy bear Mr. Davies had given her on her bed. It instantly made the place cozier. The toy reminded her of a happy, carefree time when her grandmother was still alive. A new room, a new school, new faces, and unfamiliar city, new rules. Her father was constantly lost in thought. He had taken a new job that didn't require long voyages, since he now had to be near his daughter. He was there physically, but his mind was clearly somewhere else. Alina could tell he missed the sea, his friends, and his old job. He often complained to his friends that he was earning a fraction of what he used to. "I'm not used to living like this, counting every penny until payday," he would say on the phone to his former colleagues. "You just can't make as much on land as you can at sea." Stephen tried his best to be a good father. He made his daughter breakfast in the morning and would ask her about her day in the evenings. But he only half listened to her. Alina could tell he wasn't interested in her opinions of her teachers or what her classmates had said. Stephen bought her everything she needed: clothes, food, school supplies, and even toys. He even enrolled her in a music school. "Why don't you play the guitar anymore, like you did in Little Hope?" he asked. Alina sighed. She hadn't played since her grandmother's death. She hadn't been in the mood. There was so much going on, and her soul was in a constant state of chaos. By the end of the day, she was so exhausted by her own thoughts that she would fall asleep as soon as she hit the pillow. She had no energy for her guitar, but her father's words reminded her of her beloved instrument. The girl picked up the guitar, her fingers running across the strings, and instantly felt better. It was as if a warmth from the past filled her. Why hadn't she realized earlier that music would calm her down? "Do you want to go to a music school?" her father asked. Alina thought for a moment and then agreed. She had been told since she was a little girl that she needed to go to a proper music school, that her talent couldn't flourish in a small village. Now was her chance. It took a lot of effort for her father to get his daughter enrolled. The school year was almost over, and the teachers didn't like her age. They only took students from ages 6 to 7. But her father knew how to get what he wanted. Just 2 days after their conversation, the girl started at her new school. The school was big and bright, nothing like their old village community hall. Alina was a little intimidated at first, but once she started her classes, she realized she was in exactly the right place. She absorbed all the new knowledge and techniques like a sponge, and of course, she made great progress. Soon, her teachers began to praise the diligent student. It was a wonderful feeling. The girl gradually settled into her new life. She made new friends, although she never felt as close to them as she had to her friends in Little Hope. But in the city, people didn't socialize the same way. It was still a good life. Alina and her classmates went to the cinema, skating, pizzerias, and amusement parks. Sometimes they just hung out in the park or at each other's houses. Birthdays were nothing like they had been in the village. There were no heartfelt gatherings of friends and family. Instead, they would go bowling or to trampoline parks. The kids were entertained by professional party planners in cartoon character costumes. How Alina missed the heartfelt, warm birthday parties her grandmother had hosted for her. It wasn't the first major loss in her life, but she hadn't known her mother, she hadn't gotten used to her, so she hadn't grieved her absence. Her grandmother, however, was a completely different story. Her relationship with her father was polite, civil, and a little tense. He tried to be an involved parent, but it just wasn't working. He wasn't interested in her thoughts or feelings. He didn't understand her at all. Alina didn't feel even a fraction of the love and warmth her grandmother had given her. It was a good thing music was in her life. Alina found solace in picking up her guitar and losing herself in the melody. She would play what her teachers assigned her, and she also learned to play the songs she liked or made up her own. Through music, she was able to express the feelings she couldn't share with the only person she had left. Music relaxed her and helped her feel more confident. Time went on. The small family's life gradually settled into a routine. Alina, to her father's surprise, learned to cook. The children he knew couldn't even hold a knife at her age. But Alina was adept in the kitchen. She had learned to make pies and delicious soups from her grandmother. When the girl made a tasty dinner for her father and herself using leftovers from the fridge, he was speechless. As he walked into the building, he smelled something wonderful and his mouth started to water. But he couldn't believe it was coming from his flat. "Did you make all of this?" Stephen asked in amazement as he entered the apartment. "Or did someone come to visit?" "I made it," Alina smiled. She loved seeing his stunned expression. "My grandmother taught me." Her grandmother had indeed taught her to cook from a young age. As a tiny girl, Alina helped her knead dough, and as she got older, she learned to handle a knife like a true professional. She even enjoyed cooking. It was almost like music, a true art form. Now, Alina often cooked for their small family, and she did so with great pleasure. She loved to see her father eagerly eating her culinary masterpieces. Their relationship slowly improved. It had been difficult and taken a long time, and both of them had had to work hard at it. But in the end, Alina got what she wanted: the warmth and care of her only living relative. It didn't happen right away. Her father's heart, encased in a hard shell, slowly began to thaw, and the shell would crumble and fall away. One day, Stephen realized he was interested in talking to his daughter. She had become so grown up and sensible, and her life was full of events and experiences. Now her father looked at her in a completely different way. Alina felt it and was happy about the change. He no longer kept to himself after work. He shared his plans for the future and news from his job with her. Father and daughter went on holiday together several times, just as her grandmother had once suggested. Stephen showed Alina the big cities of England: London, Edinburgh, Manchester, and Liverpool. The girl was amazed and delighted, looking around at everything. Stephen sincerely enjoyed her reaction. These were such wonderful trips. Alina discovered that her father was a clever and well-rounded man who knew a lot about all kinds of things: architecture, history, archaeology, and culture, and he was happy to share his knowledge with her. The first summer after her grandmother's death, Alina and her father went to Little Hope. He prepared the house for a long absence, shuttering the windows, wrapping the furniture in plastic, and throwing out the junk from the attic and cellar. He also found a real treasure in the attic: thick photo albums that her grandmother had so carefully kept. They told the entire story of the family, from her grandparents' ancestors to Alina. Her father took the albums back to the city with him. Preparing the house only took a couple of days, and all that time, Alina felt as if she had gone back in time. The familiar places, the warm neighbors, her old friends, they had missed her so much. When her father told her it was time to go home, Alina felt tears in her eyes. "Go home? But we've only just got here. I have to go back to work. I'm all done here. Why should we stay?" her father replied. He hadn't gotten to know his daughter well enough yet. He couldn't understand her feelings, but Mr. Davies immediately understood everything. "Let her stay with me for a couple of weeks," the old man told Stephen. "My granddaughters are here too. They've been friends since birth. They've missed each other. They can go for walks together, run to the river and the woods, and get some fresh air. It's better than the girls sitting in a stuffy concrete box all day while you're at work." "I don't know, Mr. Davies," Stephen said uncertainly. "She has no one here now." "What do you mean, no one?" the old man said indignantly. "She's like a third granddaughter to me. I've been looking after her since she was a baby." His words warmed Alina's heart. She looked at her father pleadingly. To spend just a few more weeks in her beloved Little Hope with her best friends would be a dream come true. Her father agreed. Alina and her friends jumped for joy. It was a wonderful time. Everything was as it used to be, playing with friends until late, familiar places, and neighbors who had known her since birth. The only thing missing was her grandmother, and the sight of her boarded-up house filled her heart with sadness. Her friends and neighbors noticed and tried to support her. With them, she felt a little better. Then her father came to pick her up, and it was over. Alina cried as she left for the city. Her friends hugged her, and Mr. Davies stroked her head. "It's all right, it's all right. Don't be so sad. It's not forever. You'll have autumn holiday soon. Your father will bring you back. We'll all be here waiting for you." Alina knew the old man wasn't just saying it to be polite. They really were waiting for her in Little Hope. This simple truth made her feel a little better and a little warmer, but Alina never went back for a holiday. A few months later, Mr. Davies had a stroke. He recovered but could no longer live alone in the village. His daughter, Clara and Maria's mother, took him to live with her in another city. So Alina never saw her childhood friends or her kind neighbor again. It was another blow, another harsh lesson in the new reality of her life. Her relationship with her father was warmer and more heartfelt. Their life had settled down. Life wasn't so bad. At least Alina had a relative who was willing to support and listen to her, and she cherished that. But her father, he was talking more and more about going back to sea. "It's my element, you know," he said. "The waves, the salty air, the open sea for miles around. It takes my breath away. Alina understood. She knew exactly what it felt like when your heart started to beat faster at the sight of a beloved landscape. "And we don't have enough money," Stephen complained. "The pay is so much better for those who go on voyages." They had everything they needed and more. They dressed well, ate well, and traveled. But her father still dreamed of more, and he often talked about his former earnings. "I'm grown up now," Alina said sensibly one day. "I'm 13. I've been walking to school by myself for a long time. I've been cooking since I was a child. Why don't you go back? I can see you miss the sea. I'll be fine on my own." "Oh no, you're still a child," her father replied. "I can't leave you alone for so long. What if something happens?" "What could possibly happen?" the girl asked, genuinely bewildered. She felt independent enough to live alone for a month or two. She would be lonely, of course, but she could handle it. "It's against the law to leave you alone, Chegege," he said. "You're only 13. If the neighbors find out, they'll call social services." "The neighbors here are strange, not like in Little Hope," Alina agreed. "What do you think about me getting you a nanny?" "A nanny?" Alina scoffed. "Am I a toddler?" "No. If I go to sea, someone has to look after you. She won't be a nanny for a baby, more of a housekeeper and a helper." "I don't need a housekeeper," Alina mumbled, but she understood her father wouldn't leave her alone. "Fine, hire your housekeeper," the girl sighed. Her father, having decided to go back to sea, was in high spirits. He was smiling and joking a lot. He looked like the happiest man alive. Alina was happy to see her father so content, but she was also a little worried. What if she didn't get along with this woman who was supposed to look after her and the house? What if she was horrible? His search for a housekeeper wasn't going well. Her father had contacted many agencies and called people from ads, but all he found were nannies for toddlers, pensioners or students who were willing to spend a few hours with a child, but no one wanted to live with a teenager and look after a flat. However, he didn't give up. "He who seeks, finds," he would say optimistically after another failure. One day, Stephen came home from a friend's birthday party in a great mood. "Alina, I have some great news," he said, walking into her room late at night. "Everything's been arranged, everything's sorted." "What's sorted?" she asked, confused. "I found a nanny for you. I found a housekeeper. It's the best arrangement I could have ever imagined." Alina was a little wary. This was about her life. "Can you tell me more?" she asked, and her father told her what had happened. Much later, Alina Vimpadina would find out that it was all a lie. Stephen went to his friend's birthday party. They had gone to university together and even worked on the same ship. Later, their paths diverged, but they remained close. It was a big party at a restaurant, and many of the guests were people Stephen had never met before, including Inga, a friend of his friend's wife. Inga was a tall, slender woman who looked beautiful, stylish, and friendly. At some point, Inga and Stephen started talking. They were both a little tipsy and relaxed. The evening turned into a time of deep personal stories. It turned out that Inga had recently divorced her husband. According to her, he had thrown her and her daughter out of the house after a stupid argument. "How could he do that to his own child?" Stephen asked indignantly. "I have a daughter myself." "Serena isn't his daughter," Inga sighed. "She's my child from my first marriage. My ex-husband never accepted her. He never loved her." Inga was in a desperate situation. She couldn't afford a flat, and she couldn't find a good job because she had no education or experience. Inga had devoted herself to her husband and daughter, managing the home and cooking meals. Her husband's successful business made her feel safe and happy, but she was in a vulnerable position because she was completely dependent on him. "And now I'm alone, in this terrible situation, taking any job I can get just to feed myself and Serena. My parents have been gone for years. I have no one to turn to for help. My friend invited me to this party to get my mind off things, but all I can think about are my problems." "And I thought my situation was hopeless," Stephen said. "You're having a much harder time. I hope everything works out for you in the end. I'll see what I can do to help you find a job. We're looking for a secretary at the shipping company." "What happened to you?" Inga asked, ignoring his job offer and latching onto the words, "hopeless situation." Stephen told the kind, beautiful woman everything. The death of his beloved wife, his daughter, his mother who had raised her for 10 years, and the difficulties of adjusting to his own child when she was suddenly left without her loving grandmother. He also told her about his dream of returning to sea. "I'm looking for a nanny, but no one will agree to live with us. People offer to be nannies for a few hours, but no one wants to live with a teenager and look after a flat." Inga's eyes lit up. "Don't you see that our meeting today isn't a coincidence?" she exclaimed. "This is a miracle. It's fate that brought us together." Much later, Stephen would find out that it wasn't fate at all. The host's wife knew about her friend's situation and wanted to help Inga. The two women had arranged the meeting at the party. They both thought it was a wonderful solution for Inga and for the lonely man. "How old is your child?" Inga asked. 13. Mine too. I know how to raise teenage girls. I know how to get through to them. I love spending time with them. We'll get along beautifully." Stephen hesitated. He needed a housekeeper, but he had been expecting a professional from a specialist agency. And here was Inga, with a daughter of her own. But on the other hand, time was running out. He had to go on a voyage soon, and the problem wasn't solved. "Your daughter will soon enter puberty," Inga said persuasively. "It's a very dangerous time. I know this for a fact. Serena and I have been through it. Teenagers need special supervision, or they could get into trouble." Inga was very convincing and seemed confident. Stephen considered it. She did have a lot of experience with children. Her daughter was a little older than Alina. The girls would be interested in each other. They were sure to get along. Besides, Inga was a true beauty, and Stephen liked being in her company. She was very charming. After thinking it over, he agreed. "I think this is an excellent idea." He smiled at Inga, whom he liked more and more. "You're a strong woman. You've been through so much and haven't given up." She radiated kindness and was pleasant, smart, and sensitive. Yes, this was exactly the kind of person Stephen wanted to be with Alina. Inga and her daughter Serena moved into Stephen and Alina's flat. The man put them in the living room, which was big enough. At first, both Inga and Serena seemed kind and sweet. "Oh my God, you're a real-life doll," Serena exclaimed when she first saw the girl. "Can I try to braid your hair?" Alina shrugged. She didn't usually fuss with her hair. She just tied it in a neat ponytail for school. But Serena created a stylish, braided hairstyle that looked beautiful on Alina. Alina fell in love with her reflection in the mirror. "You're gorgeous," Serena smiled. "Just perfect," Alina agreed, and it was true. Both Serena and her mother were beautiful, tall, slender, and with big eyes. Men would always turn their heads to look at them, and both Serena and Inga knew how to show off their best features through their makeup and stylish clothes. Alina was fascinated by it all. In her and her father's home, there had never been makeup or wardrobes filled with clothes. She would watch, mesmerized, as Inga applied her makeup. "It's fascinating, isn't it?" The woman smiled, noticing Alina watching her. "Come sit next to me. Let me show you some tricks." Alina saw a different person in the mirror, not herself, but a beautiful girl with enchanting eyes, delicate pink cheeks, and plump, doll-like lips. "You're amazing," Inga said. "You should always look like this." But Alina couldn't. It was beautiful. But she didn't like the feel of the makeup on her face, and it took an hour to put on and take off. Inga and Serena gave Alina something she had been missing so much: female companionship. They went shopping for clothes together and gossiped about everything in the world. They helped her get new clothes. "Your clothes are baggy and dull," Inga said, unhappy after inspecting Alina's wardrobe. "We can't wear anything else to school," Alina said. She had never thought about it before. "Nonsense," Inga said at Teda. "You can always find something that fits the rules and still looks good. Serena, it looks like we need to go shopping. Are you coming?" "Of course," Serena said. "I love shopping. We need your wonderful taste to advise us." Inga and Serena really did pick out clothes that made Alina look like a princess. Tight-fitting lace blouses, slightly cropped skirts, and high-heeled shoes. "There you go," Inga said, looking at Alina with satisfaction. "You have such a beautiful figure. You're slender and long-legged. Why would you hide it all under those baggy clothes? You may as well wear a potato sack." Alina had never received so many compliments. For the first time, she felt like a real beauty, not just a smart girl. It was a wonderful feeling. Serena became a true older sister and a friend that Alina had always dreamed of. She was older and would tell Alina about her boyfriends. Alina would get so caught up in the stories, she would forget to breathe. It was like a TV show, only real. Serena was a wonderful storyteller. Her voice would flow smoothly, and Alina would imagine the pictures of the beautiful girl's life in front of her eyes. Alina admired Serena. "Are you girls still gossiping?" Inga would ask, peeking into the room. "The pizza's here." They were wonderful days. Alina felt like she was a part of a refined female world. Her father, the girl, adored him, but he couldn't give her all of this. It turned out Alina needed this kind of companionship. She hadn't even realized it before. When Inga found out that Alina could cook, she was thrilled. "That's amazing," she exclaimed, seeing the girl taking a tray of pies out of the oven. "Did you make these yourself?" "Yes," Alina said proudly. "My grandmother taught me. I've been doing this for a long time." She had gotten tired of restaurant food and wanted to treat Inga and Serena to some home baking. "This is heavenly," Serena said, taking a huge bite out of a pie. "I've tried, but it's bad for the figure." "That's okay at your age," Inga smiled. "But Alina, you amaze me. I still haven't learned to bake, and you're so young and you're already so good at it." Alina blossomed from all the compliments. To please Inga and Serena, she would try to cook something every day. She was much better at it than Inga. The woman's soups were always too watery and salty, and her casseroles would burn on top and stay raw on the inside. Alina was happy to cook for the three of them. After all, Serena and Inga had been so kind to her. They had taught her so much. Then her father came home. Inga and Serena moved back into their flat, and Alina was very sad. She missed the girl talk, the shopping, and the trips to the cafes. She missed Inga and Serena, who had shown her a side of life she never knew existed. Her father, of course, asked his daughter how she had gotten on in his absence. Alina described Inga and Serena in glowing terms. "They're so cool, you can't even imagine," she said excitedly. "They're so interesting to be with." Her father smiled. He was clearly happy with her answer. A month passed, and Stephen went on another voyage. This time it was even longer than the first, and once again Inga and Serena came to stay. The time flew by. When her father returned, Inga and Serena didn't leave. They stayed, and Alina was ecstatic. The girl noticed that her father looked at Inga in a special way. Inga, although she tried to hide it, clearly liked her employer too. It was an inevitable turn of events. Serena looked at Alina as if she was a small child when she talked to her about what was happening. "I never doubted this would happen," she said. "I was just a little off with the timing." Serena was very observant and experienced. After her father's next voyage, he and Inga got married. They didn't have a big wedding, they just had a small dinner at a restaurant. Alina was overjoyed. This kind, beautiful woman was now a part of their family. She would live with them and give Alina the female companionship she so desperately needed. It was wonderful. Alina had been dreaming of something like this for a long time, but this was even better than she could have imagined. And now she had Serena, a practically older sister and a friend who knew so many interesting things. But everything changed as soon as her father went back to sea. The marriage certificate had a dramatic effect on Inga's attitude toward her stepdaughter. Alina had been expecting her stepmother and stepsister to be just as caring as before, but the conversations, the walks, and the care came to an abrupt end. Inga started going out with her friends and visiting beauty salons. Serena lived her own life too, filled with friends, admirers, and nightclubs. Alina was left all alone again. The only things she was praised for were her cooking and cleaning. She was the one who cleaned the entire flat and cooked delicious meals. She worked hard, hoping to earn Inga's approval. She didn't understand what was happening. Her stepmother would praise her and then order new meals for the next day. Sometimes Inga would also ask her to mop the floors. That was the extent of their conversation. Alina felt confused and betrayed. "Serena, tell me about your night out," she asked her one day. Serena looked at her blankly and didn't answer. When Alina repeated the question, Serena sighed heavily. "You're so annoying. You're like a leech. It's impossible to be around you." It was a terrible blow for Alina. She thought they were friends. Serena used to be so willing to share the details of her life with her. They talked a lot and went for walks, and Serena would give her priceless advice about makeup and fashion. And now, this. It got worse. Inga became more demanding. Now Alina was in charge of all the housework. In her husband's absence, her stepmother practically never cooked. That was Alina's job. She was in charge of all the cleaning too. At first, she would at least get praised for her help, but now she only got criticism if she didn't get something done. And that was difficult. Alina had school and music lessons. It was impossible to do all the housework and still get good grades. Alina tried to explain to Inga that she couldn't keep up. "I'm tired," she said. "I can't get all my homework done, and I keep missing my music lessons. Can't Serena at least cook or clean sometimes?" "That, my dear, is called laziness," Inga said, looking around the living room. "I'm not asking you to do anything extraordinary. Don't you know that people who live together share household chores equally?" Equally. It was so far from the truth, it was ridiculous. There was no equally in this house. Inga and Serena lived as they pleased. They went shopping and to beauty salons. Sometimes Serena wouldn't even come home at night. Inga would call her occasionally and even go out at night to pick up her wayward daughter. But her father knew nothing about this side of Serena's life. When he was home, Serena would act like a perfect lady. Inga would even make her bed for her. "Serena is studying for her final exams," Inga would say in response to Alina's fair complaints. "You'll be going to university in 2 years. She's got to do it now." But Alina had never seen Serena with a textbook. The girl rarely went to university classes, only when she felt like it. All she cared about were dates and parties. The only thing she would talk about was her looks. She would never get out of the beauty salons and the dermatologist's office, and it paid off. Serena looked magnificent, well-kept, stylish, and beautiful. Most of the money her father gave Inga for household expenses was spent on Serena's appearance. Inga would only cook and clean when her husband was home, to create the image of a perfect housewife. She didn't work. She told her husband that the girls needed special supervision at their difficult age. Stephen agreed with her. Inga was good at convincing people that her decisions were reasonable and beneficial for everyone. It was her talent. Stephen even sincerely believed he had suggested to his wife that she stay home and look after the house and the children. And he appreciated what he thought was Inga's sacrifice to give up her career for her family's happiness. It was almost heroic. Inga had a huge influence on her father. He looked at her with adoring eyes. He believed every word she said. At first, Alina liked it. She was happy for her father, who had been alone for so long and had finally found love. But now she was hurt and even scared. Inga was gradually turning from a kind, sensitive woman into a monster. "You're not doing your homework right. Your cooking isn't so good anymore. You're too slow at cleaning. What are you playing on that monstrosity?" Inga would say, pointing a finger with a perfect manicure at Alina's guitar. "My head hurts from your miserable little songs." Alina would stay silent. She knew that if she opened her mouth to defend herself, a flood of insults would pour out. She had been through it before. It was better to stay silent. Her stepmother would calm down faster. Inga didn't like Alina's love of music. She would often say the girl had no talent and would ask her to play quieter, as if it were possible. She would force Alina to miss her music lessons. But music was a true salvation for the girl. Playing her guitar calmed her down and brought her joy. And there was so little joy in Alina's life now. When her father was home, Inga acted completely differently. The caring, worried parent, the wonderful housewife, the loving wife. Her father often repeated how lucky he was to have met such a woman. But Inga was slowly turning him against his daughter. Carefully, delicately, and expertly, she would lie. She would portray herself as a worried parent. Alina is going through puberty now. She's so difficult, she's rude, she's lazy, and she hates everyone. Her grades are terrible, and she only cares about going out with friends. Inga would tell her father this without a care if Alina heard. She knew he wouldn't believe his daughter if she tried to defend herself. Inga's influence was too strong, and she was an excellent manipulator. "I think she should stop going to music school," Inga suggested one day. "Alina spends too much time on something so useless, and her grades are suffering. I think she goes out with bad company and just pretends she's at music school. I talked to her teacher there, and she told me she's been skipping lessons." Her father, as usual, agreed with Inga. Her words always had the last say. When the man told his daughter that she was no longer going to music school, Alina knew whose doing it was. For the first time, the girl spoke up. She was fighting for her passion and had become brave and determined. No, I don't want to quit music school. Inga just wants me to spend more time at home and do all the housework. I cook, clean, and do the laundry. I'm like a servant here when you're not home. See, Inga said to her husband, looking worried and sad. See how she reacts. And all I'm doing is trying to teach the child to work. It's nothing unusual. In all normal families, children have small chores. But all Alina wants is to go out and be free. That's dangerous at her age. Look at your own daughter, Alina cried out, losing her temper. You should watch her. Her outburst played right into Inga's hands. She pretended to be understanding and didn't hold it against her stepdaughter. Alina tried to complain to her father about Inga, but he didn't take her seriously. You're just jealous, he said, stroking her head. I'll try to pay more attention to you. Whatever Alina said sounded unconvincing. After all, her father was constantly being manipulated by Inga, and after their open argument, Alina's words had even less meaning to him. At least that's what the girl thought. Alina had to quit music school. She had lost her only source of joy. Of course, she would still play for herself sometimes, which at least helped her with the constant stress. To cement the effect, Inga would occasionally pit father and daughter against each other. She was an expert at playing people like chess pieces. Her father was completely under his charming wife's spell. He was sure that puberty had turned his sweet daughter into a monster, and he thanked his lucky stars that in this difficult time, an experienced and caring woman was by her side. At first, Alina would still try to reach her father, but after each attempt, Inga would do something new to get her way. One day, Serena took money from the family savings. Alina knew this. She had heard Serena begging her mother for money for a trip to London with her friends. Her mother had refused, saying she didn't like Serena's friends. But Serena was not used to being told no. She went to London anyway, which sent Inga into a rage. She had a go at Serena on the phone. I don't care. Do whatever you want. Of course she didn't care. Serena wasn't used to being told what to do. Both Inga and Alina knew where Serena had gotten the money, Stephen's savings. But when her father returned, her stepmother blamed Alina. Serena was already home and acting like a perfect student. Her acting skills were inherited from her mother and were perhaps even better than hers. Her father didn't scold Alina. Instead, he talked to her at length, trying to figure out what she needed such a large amount of money for. Are you in some kind of trouble? Do you need help? Alina tried to explain what had really happened. He just held her hands tighter, as if in pain, and begged her not to lie. Tell me the truth, he pleaded. What's going on with you? Alina said no more. It was useless. Her father thought she was a difficult teenager capable of theft. What more was there to say? Inga's words were a powerful weapon. The man didn't trust his own daughter. But he believed every word his wife said. And Alina couldn't do anything about it. Time went on. The time to apply to university was approaching. Alina knew Serena would fail. It would be interesting to see how her stepmother would explain that to her father. For years, she had worked hard on creating the perfect image of her daughter. In her stories, Serena was a smart, diligent, and talented student. Inga constantly compared the girls, and Serena was always better than Alina. It's nothing, Inga would tell her husband. I've raised one girl to be so successful, so I'll be able to handle your daughter too. I know how to raise girls. At a certain age, they need a firm hand. Her father would agree with Inga and with a light heart would give her full authority to raise Alina. You know best, he would tell his wife. Alina had gotten used to this life. The insults, the indifference, the burden of most of the housework, and the restrictions. Sometimes Alina felt like Cinderella. Inga was a true fairy tale stepmother. They say fairy tales have a moral. Then, when her father was away, a young, stylish, handsome, and polite man named Victor started visiting Inga. His wife explained to the girls that he was a distant relative. But Victor looked at Inga in a way that made Alina know her stepmother was lying. Serena didn't believe her mother either. She would smirk every time he was in the house. Now, Inga wouldn't come home at night sometimes, and Alina knew exactly what was happening. Her stepmother had a lover. The charming, young, and handsome lawyer was madly in love. Alina was offended on behalf of her father. He trusted his wife so much, and Alina also tried to understand why Inga needed this man. Stepmother never did anything without a purpose. But perhaps it was love after all. He was handsome, like a model from a magazine. Even Serena looked at him with special interest. Alina tried to tell her father what was happening. She cautiously told him about the man who came to visit and about the nights Inga spent away from home. "Are you telling me the truth? Are you trying to slander Inga again? You two are always arguing." "Dad, it's the truth!" the girl almost screamed. She knew he didn't fully believe her, but she had planted a seed of doubt in his mind. Stephen, of course, talked to his wife. She told him that the relative had just moved to their city for a short time, and that Alina was just arguing with everyone out of rebellion. Alina heard every word her stepmother said and clenched her fists in helpless anger. Inga looked and sounded as convincing as ever, unlike Alina, who was just an offended teenager with a behavior problem. Stephen didn't know what to do. The next day, he went to a shipping company and asked for a job. He had to go back to the sea, but it would be so much harder now. After all, he was supporting not only himself and his daughter, but 2 other people. He had taken on the responsibility, and he had to provide for his family. Alina is completely out of control. She must need a father, he thought. But how could he leave his job at sea to make a fraction of the money? Inga was wonderful, smart, and subtle. Stephen had lost his head over her from the moment he met her. They had met at a friend's party at the perfect time. It was as if all the pieces of a puzzle had fallen into place. At first, Alina was thrilled with her stepmother and stepsister. Her eyes shone with happiness. When he went on his last voyage, he was at peace, knowing his daughter was in good hands. Coming home had become so much more enjoyable too. What a joy to have a beautiful woman eagerly waiting for you. He had forgotten what it was like. He envied himself. But then Alina's puberty started. The girl was like a different person. She became lazy and rude. She reacted to simple requests inappropriately. One day, she even stole a large amount of money from the family's savings. What could she have needed that money for? Stephen was afraid his daughter was running with a bad crowd. Inga thought so too. Alina was constantly complaining about her stepmother. It wasn't surprising, as she was trying to raise her and limit her freedom and was making her clean up after herself. It was much easier to be lazy all day and not do homework or chores. Inga was now a hindrance to the girl's carefree life. Stephen understood this, but he didn't know how to help his daughter get through this difficult period. He had never really understood Alina. He wished babies came with a manual. And now, Alina had gone too far. She had hinted that Inga had a lover, a man named Victor. His wife denied it. She said he was a relative who had moved to the city, a busy young man who had no time to meet Stephen. He worked hard to get by. But Alina insisted that Inga was a lying monster and that Victor was her lover. Stephen looked into his daughter's honest eyes and was horrified. The things she was saying and the way she was acting were unlike her. So he decided to install a hidden camera in the flat. The camera would record everything and broadcast it to his phone live. When he got back from his next voyage, he would show the recordings to Alina. She would see how silly she looked, trying to blacken Inga's name. Maybe something would click in her head, and she would get a grip on herself. The hidden camera showed him the truth. Inga treated her stepdaughter like a servant, looking at her with contempt and making her work hard for the entire family. These were not reasonable chores for a teenager. Alina didn't just clean up after herself. She kept the entire flat clean. She did the laundry and cooked all the meals, and for all that, she only got insults and criticism. Of course, when Stephen was home, Inga didn't act this way. The man couldn't believe his eyes. His heart ached when he saw his daughter as a helpless Cinderella. So, Inga had been lying all this time, lying to him with those honest, devoted eyes. Alina had tried so many times to reach him, but he didn't believe a single word she said. Her words had sounded like pitiful excuses. Poor girl. If only he could, he would have crossed hundreds of miles right then and there to protect her. He had, with his own hands, turned his own child's life into a nightmare. And the girl had asked him for help, but he hadn't believed her. Her words seemed like pitiful excuses. He saw a young man enter their flat and hug Inga in a way that was anything but familial. Sparks were flying between them. The camera was high quality, and Stephen could hear every word they said. Victor turned out to be an experienced and expensive lawyer. He was using his best charms, and Inga, of course, was using hers too. They were lovers. The young lawyer was probably under the woman's spell, and she, of course, was pursuing her own agenda. Stephen soon realized what it was. His mother had left her cottage and garden in Little Hope to Alina. Inga knew about it and had been looking for a way to sell the property. She needed the money. Serena, her biological daughter, wouldn't get a scholarship to university. She had never been a diligent student, and miracles don't happen. So Inga needed a decent amount of money to pay for Serena's tuition. His wife knew that Stephen would never agree to such a thing. That's why she needed Victor as Alina's legal guardian. Inga had the right to control her stepdaughter's property until she came of age. Inga was going to sell the cottage in Little Hope and use the money for Serena. She didn't want Stephen to find out. As an experienced lawyer, Victor was the perfect person to help her. He, like Inga, was an expert manipulator. Stephen clenched his fists in helpless rage. He couldn't leave Alina alone with these awful people. He still had a lot of time left on his voyage, but it was hard to cancel a mission. He would do it anyway. Alina was in danger. Alina tried her best to hold back her tears. She didn't want Serena to see how sad she was. Serena and her mother would purposely try to make her lose control. The girl had had many outbursts in front of her father because she couldn't hold it all in, and this had played right into her stepmother's hands. Now, Inga was accusing Alina of being a truant. Her stepmother was working hard to paint Alina as a bad girl in front of her father. She had been on the phone with Inga. "Do whatever you want," Inga had said nonchalantly. "I don't care." Of course she didn't care. The day before, Alina had cleaned the entire flat and cooked enough food for a couple of days. Otherwise, her stepmother wouldn't have let her leave the house. When Alina came home the next morning, she saw 2 police officers in the flat. At first, the girl thought it was about Serena, who would often disappear at night. "Is the girl who was missing found?" the officer asked Inga. Inga nodded, and the girl knew what was happening. Her stepmother had called the police to report that her underage stepdaughter hadn't come home for the night, even though she knew exactly where she was. "I told you I was staying at my friend's," Alina whimpered. "You're lying again," Inga wailed. "What am I going to do with you? One more stunt like this, and you'll have a police record." A police record? The girl knew her stepmother was trying to get her in trouble. And now, Alina was trying not to cry as she huddled on her bed, hugging the teddy bear Mr. Davies had given her. She knew she would once again be portrayed to her father as a bad girl, and he would, as always, believe his wife without question. He would look at her with sad, worried eyes, and his look, it was so hard to bear. Suddenly, a key turned in the front door. Alina started. Who could it be? Serena and Inga were home, and her father was supposed to be at sea for another 3 weeks. Had Inga given a key to that Victor? That's all they needed. But then she heard her father's voice in the hallway. "I'm home!" "You're back so soon?" Inga's voice sounded confused, and at the same time overly joyful. "What a wonderful surprise." "I know everything," her father said. He clearly wasn't sharing her enthusiasm. "I saw and heard everything. Pack your bags. You have until tonight. You will not harm my daughter anymore. Ever." Alina's heart beat like a trapped bird. She rushed into the hallway and threw her arms around her father. She would find out later how he knew everything, but now it didn't matter. Stephen held his daughter in a tight embrace. He smelled of the sea. "Everything will be all right now," he whispered. "Forgive me for not believing you. I won't let anyone hurt you again." This story is for you. If you enjoyed it, please like, comment, and subscribe for more.